Zoom, right? Like another virtual something in life. Is kind of daunting at this point. I don't know about for y'all, but you know, it's really a lot of energy exerted to Zoom all the time. So thanks for adding one more to your list today, and hopefully it'll be worth your time. I'm Katie Harrison. I'm a counselor at the Counseling Center. I've been there for almost 4 years, and I also coordinate all of our outreach. So if you've ever been to an outreach presentation or a grad school lunch and learn or something like that, you've probably seen me and Kaylin, because we like to get out of the office and go do these things. It breaks up our day. So I'll turn it over to Kaylin, but again, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much. And as Katie said, I'm Kaylin Ditz, also a counselor at the Counseling Center, and happy to be here, happy to see you all, even though, as I mentioned earlier, not quite in the same capacity, right, that we would hope. But of course, there's still a lot of great information, and definitely want to echo what's been said about putting information in the chat or putting questions. And, you know, definitely if you feel comfortable speaking out, do so as well. Usually we have this in person where we can collaborate and ask questions as we go. So please, if you have something that you want to add, don't mind interruptions, totally good with that. And we'll get started. So Katie might be sharing the screen. We do have a presentation, so we'll, as she's getting that going, we will be talking about imposter syndrome. So, and this is something I think we hear about semester after semester. Already, the interns or the GAs at the Counseling Center, we've talked about this, or we've talked about that with our students, and so this is something that comes up over and over and over again. So we definitely want to shine some light and even hear from you, as I said. So always like to start about, talking about what is it? Because I think I've heard students say, I think I'd have this, or I think I know about it, or they come off the bat saying, I have imposter syndrome, what do I do? And, basic information, it is a psychological pattern. So it's these individual doubts of our accomplishments that persist. And what I always like to focus on is that it's this internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So that internalized concern, and even Dr. Cluck mentioned this earlier and I jotted it down, it's those silent voices. It's that concern of not fitting in, not belonging. And again, it's those things that come from within, right? It's not that someone said, hey, Kaylin, you don't fit in and you don't know anything, right? It might be those concerns that I have just going on in my own head that no one else has probably said out loud, so it's really that unwanted sense of insecurity. It's that concern that, maybe I haven't earned everything, or I shouldn't be here. Yeah, there's been times where I've thought that on this campus and thought, ooh, do I know enough to be even giving this presentation? And then it's like, okay, someone invited me, I've got some knowledge, let me remind myself of that. But it's that concern that we might not be worthy, or again, that fear of being a fraud. And these are some other thoughts that, come up. It's, my success is due to luck. I only got in because somebody took a chance, they picked a name out of the hat. No, we know graduate schools don't accept anyone just by picking names and said, oh, Kaylin, that sounds kind of cool, let's give her a master's in social work. Nope. I think it took me a long time to even realize that, and think about it. But this concern that, I don't belong here, or again, I don't fit in, or I'm not as capable as what my classmates think, my professors think, or I'm not as capable as what I want to be, or as I think I need to be. Again, so it may, sometimes I look around in the room at this point, or look at the participants and think, has anyone else felt this way, or thought some of these things, or something similar, or maybe completely different too? And if not, that's okay. So definitely no worries. So something we like to kind of debunk, one of those myths or one of those fears, is that it is not a psychological diagnosis. It's not a mental disorder. It's not in our DSM, our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So that's something that you won't be diagnosed with imposter syndrome. Because I think, again, we get a lot of these questions at the Counseling Center of, oh, is this my diagnosis, or am I labeled with this? Well, no, it's not something that you're diagnosed with. And, it's not this sentence for failure. It's not something that, you know, if you feel this way, that means you can't go on and improve. And also, it's not uncommon. I think I mentioned already like 4 different times I've felt this way, right? Even just in this few minutes that we've been talking so far, you know, it's not uncommon. So that means there's other people sitting on this Zoom, you know, not this room, but this Zoom, who have felt this way. And definitely people who have been in your classes or in your programs, or possibly your professors, more than likely. You know, I talked with some professors earlier and they're like, yeah, I feel that every other day. You know, this is real. This is, you know, we got to challenge those. So we'll definitely get to that too. I think Katie's going to take this slide. That's good.
Sure. I love this one. Okay, so who has it besides me, and me and Kaylin, right? So some really famous people have had it. Maya Angelou had it. Albert Einstein had it. And in fact, he quoted himself as being like an involuntary swindler, right? Like, I don't mean to, but I'm swindling all these people, and, you know, my theories probably don't make sense to anyone but me. Me, them, and then most of you in this presentation. And so we know that the research says about 70% of people at some point in their life experience imposter syndrome. So likely you have experienced it, or the person next to you on these little boxes has experienced it. And that's normal, right? I think we try to talk about normalizing our experiences, and yet when you're in grad school, nothing feels normal. And so normalizing that, you know, I do deserve to be here. Like Kaylin said earlier, I know what I'm doing. They didn't draw my name out of a hat. I may not know a lot, but I know enough to be here and to learn, right? And then this is another famous person, but she says it's almost like the better I do, the more my feeling of inadequacy actually increases, because I'm just going, any moment someone's going to find out I'm a total fraud and I don't deserve any of what I've achieved. And again, I think normalizing that people that we even see on TV in, you know, multi-million-dollar movies experience this feeling, right? And so it's very normal. I was watching a few of them last night. There are a lot of TED Talks where people talk about the imposter syndrome. And one of them was this guy that had started a company in Australia. And he goes on to win like new entrepreneur of, like, I don't know. It was not even Australia. It was global. And he's like, the whole time I'm up here in like a hoodie and jeans. And I'm like, what are these people seeing that I don't see, right? And so even some of the most successful people experience this. And so why do we have it? Well, we do know it's not necessarily tied to self-esteem, right? So you may have pretty good self-esteem, but you still feel like somebody's going to figure me out. And so some of the things that it can come from are anxiety, right? Fear of failure. If you're in grad school, that is definitely true, right? Fear of failure. A need for perfection. An inability to accurately assess your achievements. So I have this list of things that I've achieved. I can look at my CV and see all these great things, but they really, I really don't think I've done that much. Self-doubt, and then untrue beliefs about ourselves, like I'm not good enough. And a lot of times those are already embedded in us. Those maybe have been embedded within our self-talk from even like an early time in our lives, childhood, something like that. And those can definitely kind of flow into some of these beliefs that we have around imposter syndrome as an adult. So we've got what it is, and that it might be okay if I have it. So how is it harmful? Well, like we talked about earlier, a lot of things wouldn't exist if some of these people that have experienced it kind of threw their hands up and said, yeah, no, I'm bowing out because someone's going to figure me out, right? So no theory of relativity. None of Maya Angelou's works. And it can prevent people from applying for things. And so how many of you have ever felt like I'm not going to apply for that job, or I'm not going to apply for that program because there's no way they're going to accept it. There's no way I could get that, right? I'm qualified, but there's no way they would give it to me, right? So think about Bill Gates. His first business failed. So if he'd have given up, no Microsoft. Well, I don't know if we would be Zooming right now. Jim Carrey, homeless at 15, no laughing. And then Steven Spielberg. Oh, one of my closest. No Jaws, Jurassic Park, or E.T., right? He couldn't get into film school first time he tried. And so we would have none of these great works if, you know, imposter syndrome had one, not been there, but two, had really taken control of how these people responded to, you know, failures in life, or what they felt like were failures. So what do we do? Well, one thing, you're in this Zoom, I was going to say in this Zoom presentation, right? And so we're talking about it. We're normalizing that these things happen, right? These things are normal. And I put in parentheses, talk to those smart people, because guess what? Like, that's all you, right? You're in here, you're talking about it, but we perceive people to, you know, there's always that one person in our class that knows everything, right? Or there's that one person in our program that's like the expert on all these things. I guarantee you they've experienced this as well at some point in their life. Maybe experiencing it right now. Another thing is to identify the voice. So I have these thoughts in my head, I have these beliefs. I need to identify that, right? Is this something internally, or is this people telling me that I'm not good enough, right? Very different. Calling out the lies and negative beliefs and saying, you know, it is what it is. This is imposter syndrome. This is not that I can't do it. This is not that I'm not smart enough, or that I'm going to be figured out, or that I'm a fraud. This is a real thing. This is imposter syndrome. And how do I cope with it? And the last one is huge, right? Stop comparing yourself. Find your strengths. Kaylin is an amazing organizer. She's, like she said, she's a social worker. And so we jokingly tease her that, like, why have we not had a social worker on staff? Because, like, without her, we are all a bunch of bumbling idiots and don't know where we're supposed to be or what we're doing or have any form. I mean, she's amazing with that. And so that's her strength, right? And for me to ever compare my organizational skills to Kaylin's would be terrible. But we all have our strengths, and we have what we're really good at. And no one's good at all of it. They're just not, right? Again, there may be that person that you feel like is that kind of expert on things, but everyone has their strengths and everyone has their weaknesses. So having said all of that, let's talk about maybe some of your experiences with imposter syndrome. So if you have questions about it, but also maybe if you've experienced it, one of the questions we have on here is like, what's one thing you've avoided because you felt like a fraud? Again, maybe it was a job application, or maybe it was applying for a certain school, or maybe it was a big move for you. But let's really normalize it and talk about it, like we just said, and talk about your experiences with that. And I'm trying to make it bigger where I can see everyone. If you're not comfortable speaking, most definitely you can add that in the chat, like Kaylin said. But surely someone here has felt that. And again, I know I have, and I know Kaylin has. But normalizing that this is okay and this is part of it, right?
So I'll share really quick. It's been a while since I've been a graduate student, but I spent the first year of graduate school convinced they had made a mistake that they should not have let me in, and they were totally going to figure that out. I don't believe that now, but it is something I can very much relate to, particularly as a new graduate student. I remember feeling that way.
This is just something small. I don't know if you guys can see me or anything, but it's my first year of my PhD, and I don't have a master's, so I'm straight from undergrad. And I avoided joining the Animal Behavior Conservation Society, which is what my PhD is in, until I got into school, because I didn't feel like I was an actual scientist that was eligible to join this, even though it's for everyone. So that's just something small that I kind of noticed.
Yeah, that's an awesome example, both of those. And so kudos to you for taking a really big step in going from undergrad to a PhD program. That's awesome. But also, you know, talking about like, I didn't feel like a real scientist, right? Like, I think we hear that a lot. I don't feel like a real counselor, or I don't feel like a real professor. And so, yeah, so thanks for sharing, Jessica and Annette. Those were perfect examples. Other people have avoided certain things in their lives because they didn't feel good enough, or they felt like maybe they were going to be, you know, called out for applying for something or doing something.
Here's one that was submitted in chat.
Okay.
So even the one in the chat box, you know, it's sounding like being new to this career, new to this field, right? And that's where mine's a little bit different, but you know, it's something new. It's saying, okay, now I am able to be this scientist, able to be this artist. For me, it was, now I call myself a counselor. I used to call myself a social worker, right? It's even these new little identities, but now it's, okay, it's hard to get that started. It's hard to get these new projects and say, I am good enough to do this. You know, I have this knowledge behind me. So being able to check in and say, okay, you're walking in this door and you really do have knowledge, you know, so not comparing it to the person who's been in the field for 50 years or 20 years or 2 years, right? Because sure, they have different experience, but you still have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience yourself. And it's, you're all in grad school, right? So you're building on that too. So not forgetting that you are here to learn, you are here to try out things. And sometimes when we try, right, it's not the best, or it's not, you know, what we're completely satisfied with, but that's why you start out as students. You're here to learn. Okay, so having a hard time starting research, right? Not feeling like you're capable enough. But let's even remember, hey, you know, you're here, you're in this coursework, you're doing, you know, you're working hard, right? And everyone has these different strengths. Katie talked to that. You know, if we have different strengths, and maybe someone's strength is in research and your strength is somewhere else, or vice versa, right? And so we have to find those areas and then start to get comfortable. And, you know, I think it's always almost even getting comfortable with some of that discomfort. And that's something that's taken me a long time to figure out. You know, and if you would have asked me like 5 years ago, hey, are you going to go around and do presentations every week? I probably would have said no. Probably would have been like, oh, what am I going to present on? Or I hate the way my voice shakes when I talk sometimes, or I blush quite a bit, you know, and we joke about this, and it's something that now I know this about myself. So it's not the only thing I focus on. You know, I focus on, who am I talking with? What are we talking about? Because that's so much more important than, you know, if my cheeks get a little pink.
Someone said getting anxious while applying for internships. Oh my goodness, right? Like that feels like so much pressure. And that surely they're not going to pick me, because there have to be like a ton of different applicants that are way more experienced or way better than me. So that's definitely a real one, I think, that a lot of us have experienced. And avoiding starting a new project because I think I'm not smart enough to do it. Yeah. I was asked to make a video for the ASB, and for weeks I put it off and put it off because I was like, yeah, I'm not tech savvy. I don't know how to do that, and surely it's going to be awful. And so avoided starting that new thing because I was like, I can't do that when I could. I probably could, but I'm definitely not the expert on that. And so yeah, it causes us to maybe reconsider doing things that we're completely capable of doing. Yeah, these are some really good ones in the chat. Other people or other comments to add to some of these? One of the other things I'll say, while maybe you're thinking about it, is during one of the TED Talks, someone, the one that I was watching, said, that this isn't necessarily a bad thing to have. In fact, it can be kind of beneficial, right? And we have a great coworker, and excuse my language, but she always says, I don't know shit about shit. But she is the most open-minded counselor that you'll find, and she is willing to learn and willing to jump into things and willing to say, I don't know. Let's find someone that does know. And so, that really grows your ability to learn and to know things, right? If we always feel like we know stuff, we're kind of shut off to learning. So I love that she says. I'm a GA, and part of my job is writing and research. I like that I'm actually getting paid for this. It is not a school assignment. It becomes way more official. Right. Yeah. So if somebody pays me for my work, right, like I've really got to be on top of my game. Because what if they find out that, like, I'm just a grad assistant and I don't know anything, right? I still feel like that as a paid employee sometimes. Like, they're going to catch on and, like, not pay me. How do you help a friend who has imposter syndrome? I see her CV and remind her of her journey, but that doesn't work. So how can I help her? Oh, that's a good question. Who has thoughts on that? Anybody had a friend who's had imposter syndrome, and you've really tried to help them with that? And what'd you do?
So something to notice, as we're talking about imposter syndrome is to normalize it, right? So sharing our stories, sharing how, again, I think all of us, or most of us, I'll say, right, have felt this way in some capacity. So sometimes even having those conversations with friends, with colleagues, with your cohort members and saying, yeah, I've felt that way too. Or, yeah, oops, sorry. I've questioned my abilities too. And so, being able to say, this is normal. This is really common. You're not the only one who's ever felt that way. And, I'll say that even when I work with my clients, and I'll say, this is not to take away your experience, but let me tell you, sometimes that helps to know I'm not the only one, right? I'm not this is not weird that I feel this way, right? Other people do feel this way too. So how can we talk about it? And how can we say, let's decrease some of this imposter syndrome. Let's talk about, hey, let's recognize how great you are, or what are those positive, or what are those strengths that you have built on, you have worked on.
I will say, from a mom's point of view, with my daughter and getting her resume together, and she was just like, well, I was just a cashier at Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, okay, so you handled hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars daily. You exhibited incredible customer service skills and communication skills. And she started, after doing that with a couple of her jobs, she's like, okay, I kind of see where you're coming from. So maybe bouncing it off somebody different and saying, what do you see from my experience? How would you describe it?
Yeah. I can't. So for me, like, that's pretty admirable. I can't imagine dealing with that many things going on every day and being that fast paced, right? And so like Paige said, like building upon some of the things that maybe you don't see, but other people see in you. Yeah.
I love even the specific examples, right? Being able to say, I noticed, this, or you were able to work with hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. That's not even something that kind of registers in my mind. I'm like, oh gosh, I'd probably give the wrong change. So it's noticing, right, these different skill sets that sometimes you're just doing it. And so you're not thinking about it as clearly or as specifically because you do it every day.
Someone posted about job position. Currently looking at a job and feel like I could never get that position. Constantly worry about someone will see that. Yeah, totally feel that. Mm-hmm. And I think even from a standpoint of having been on a search committee, I felt someone's going to figure out that like I shouldn't be making these decisions. Like I shouldn't really have a say-so in who we hire, right? Because who am I? So even on the flip side of that, I wonder if your person that you're interviewing with kind of has some of those things going on too, First year PhD student, don't have a research background, constantly find myself thinking, can I do this? Was it just my personality that got me this far? Yeah. If you feel like you were the second choice of your PI, it is appropriate to ask your PI if they accepted your competition, but your competitor rejected the position, leading your PI to accept you. Is it appropriate to ask if you're meeting your PI's expectations of what they wanted in a graduate student? Yeah. So if you're second choice to something, and I think this is even maybe in jobs, right? Sometimes it's offered to someone else and they turn it down. And so then you're offered a position. And how that plays into, are you second choice? I think a lot of that has to do with how we, what we tell ourselves, right? And so that stopping that negative thinking or those negative beliefs. And so I would say, they didn't have to choose you, right? Like they could say, yeah, we're not going to choose anyone then because she's not qualified. And I think, I think it's always appropriate to ask if you're meeting expectations. So am I doing what you had envisioned for this position? Are there things that I need to improve on? Are there things that I'm not doing that I should be doing? Or are there things that you're noticing? I think that's always appropriate to ask of your professor or your supervisor. We have speaking of grad students, we have grad assistant placements in the counseling center. And so these are masters and sometimes masters, mostly PhD students in counselor ed and psychology. And so these are super smart people, and they come to us and then they sit with us to supervise them for licensure or to supervise their work with students. And on more than one occasion, I've thought I technically should be sitting with you because you probably know a lot, and I've even said it, you probably know a lot more of what's in those textbooks than I know or remember. But that doesn't discount our experiences and what we have to bring to the table. And so, while I teach them a lot about what it's like to be a licensed clinician, they teach me a ton about new research. And that's what brought that up for me. Someone had said, I don't have a research background. I was awful in research, terrible. And I hated it. And so they really teach me a ton of that. And oftentimes, I don't know if Kaylin's experienced this as well, but it's like, okay, this grad student's totally going to figure out that I really don't know a lot. They're teaching me more than I'm teaching them.
Yeah, I think you hit that right on the head, Katie, because I'm supervising a PhD student in psychology. I have taken a handful of psychology courses in undergrad a number of years ago. So, of course, social work ties or has similar ties to that. But in my mind, I'm thinking they know more, right? They know way more. They can tell me about maybe these theories or this new research or something that maybe I knew, maybe I never knew, and it's this fear, right? This concern that I'm not good enough. But then I have to say, okay, but what are those strengths, right? I've been a clinician. I am a licensed clinician, and I'm here to tell you how to do therapy or help you with that process. So we got to remember, how do we find that balance, right? And hey, tell me about that new research because I don't know it, or tell me about that theory, maybe I never learned it. So being able to still learn, even when we are that professional or we are, teaching someone else, but being humble enough to say, I want to learn from you too.
Other thoughts or experiences? Kudos, because there's like, I don't know, 10 or so. I don't know what the number is on the chats, but like, if this doesn't normalize it, right? That everyone has had their own experiences with this. And again, I go back to something we said earlier in the presentation. It's like, if you haven't experienced it, the box next to you or up under you or above you has. So thank you for people who have shared. Anyone else like to share? Or anyone else have questions? Again, while you're thinking, I'm going to click onto our next screen, which is our information. And so feel free to screenshot this or jot this down. Again, this is being recorded. So, and then I'm happy to share the presentation as well. But this is our information for the Counseling Center. We are still located at 320 Lester Hall. Our office hours are 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We are currently doing telemental health sessions, which are all on a HIPAA compliant, confidential Zoom platform that we use. And so some of us are in the office and some of us are telecommuting, but all of those are through Zoom, telemental health and crisis intervention. And so if there is a crisis going on and it is something that has to be dealt with in person, again, there are people at the Counseling Center. I would say just give us a call before you come over. The building is still locked. So give us a heads up and let us know what we're dealing with. Then our website, there you can find all of our information. We update that pretty regularly regarding groups and individual sessions and how you make an appointment at the Counseling Center. So we're also doing groups this semester and they're virtual, and we've never done telemental health groups before. So this is a learning experience. I will start the grad student group on Monday, and Imposter Syndrome tells me that I don't know what I'm doing with that, but we will figure it out. So if you're interested in any of the groups, they're listed on the website, and it talks about how to get in touch with the Counseling Center to inquire more about those services. And then following us on some social media, we have events or things going on, and we'll post those to our social media pages if you want to follow those as well. All right. Looks like there's some more stuff in the chats. Okay, good question. What happens when you add race and gender to imposter syndrome and navigating through feelings that others don't value your work and your research because it's coming from you and or exploring race, gender, and sexuality that you share? That's a great question and a great piece to add into this, because yeah, how does that play into feeling like I'm not good enough? Is it because of something that I don't have control of, right? My race, my gender. Yeah, thoughts on that?
So I'll just share that I do think there's a lot of ways that sort of stereotypes can actually sort of make this feeling, even more prominent. And so, if I don't believe someone whatever the identity is, you know, if it's my gender, my race, my sexuality, if I don't believe someone of my background, you know, if I'm getting messages that someone of my background doesn't belong, like it's hard to shake that. And that's going to make it all the more prominent that those messages are there. So I think, you know, part of what happens is it makes it even more understandable that someone would experience it. I also think, you know, it's hard to you know, it's helpful to talk to other people and talk to other people who maybe can understand the perspective that you're coming from. I know I find it helpful to talk to, so I meet with other women academic leaders to kind of talk through, you know, there are some things that it's like, did that happen because I'm a woman? Did that, you know, just me? Like, what happened there? And so having people to talk through some of those things with can be helpful. And then I also think, you know, sometimes there are messages, it's not that it's something that I'm just hearing more broadly, but sometimes there are things happening in an environment that truly are inequitable or discriminatory, and then we need to do something to fix that, because no one should have to deal with being in that kind of environment. So, you know, in that case, it would be my hope that students would reach out to someone, whether it's, you know, the counseling center can be a resource to help if someone's experiencing that. The graduate school is happy to be a resource. There's also offices on campus that you can reach out to report stuff to. So our EORC office is available. So I do want to sort of acknowledge that sometimes it's no longer internal, it's that you really are being treated differently. And of course, that's unacceptable. And that's not your fault. Not that imposter syndrome is anybody's fault either, but that's not you anymore. That's somebody else. And you shouldn't have to deal with that. So I think that's an important piece to share.
Let me add the intersectionality of both ethnicity and gender and just different social locations definitely, I think, impact the imposter syndrome, just because your social location can definitely shape what you believe about yourself, particularly as the country is more and more polarized. So I think you just have to be aware of kind of where those feelings are coming from, and really try to take a look at, you know, internally, like why do I feel this way? And sometimes it's environmental. So if you're here at a majority white institution, if you were at HBCU, the race may not be so prevalent. And so social location matters. If you're a female academic leader or you're in a graduate program and it's mostly men, then your gender will be a lot more salient in terms of identity development. So just remember to be kind to yourselves, because these intersections do matter, and depending on where you are and what the environment is, the identity that is most salient will change and shift depending on what location you are. So I just want to honor that, yes, all of those things will impact whether you feel like an imposter. And unfortunately, depending on the environment and the setting, some of those identities will be more salient and you feel more internally on display than in other places. So that is something that's difficult to navigate.
Yeah, thanks for speaking on that. I agree, and I think we've heard students say that. I mean, I've had people in grad groups say, because I'm a female in a science major, because I'm an African American female in a mostly white male dominated department. And I think Dr. Cluck makes a good point. You know, a lot of times it can be something environmental. And so talking about these things, right, and being able to say, I think this is what's going on. Can I talk to you about it? And so, you know, again, whether that's at the counseling center and even at the counseling center, we have groups that are very specialized to certain populations. We've had in the past, we've had a women of color group, and we've had grad student group, and we have international student group. And these are safe places where you can talk about these things and say, you know, has this been your experience? This is my experience. What have you done in this? What can I do, right? And so talking about these things and really trying to figure out, again, how this affects your imposter syndrome, or your work life or your home life or any of these areas. They do definitely all flow together, right? If it affects you at work or at school, you're probably going to take it home. I definitely have. Yeah, really good points. Other thoughts? This is great discussion. I tell Kaylin, me and Kaylin talk about this. I love doing outreach for grad school because you all talk, right? Like it's not like a lot of freshmen just kind of sitting there like, I don't care. I just got to be here for an extra 100. I love the conversation. So again, I greatly appreciate that. Okay. So it looks like Paige has put up a survey for this. Again, I will, if you want to email the counseling center, we're happy to, have a consultation with you. If you want to set up an appointment, we're happy to do that as well. Any way that we can be helpful for you, you still call the front desk and we'll set you up that way. Again, if you're interested in groups or individual or, again, I don't really even know if counseling is what I want to do. Can I sit and, talk to somebody on the phone or talk to somebody through a Zoom for 30 minutes and see if this is right for me? Please do so. We do that every day and we encourage people to do that. We definitely don't want you to feel like you're jumping into something that may or may not be right for you. But if you have questions about it, or if you have needs, we're more than happy to talk with you and see, what works best for you. So I encourage you to do that. Again, you can find our information on the website. You can find it through here. You can email us, whatever you need to do.
So you mentioned earlier that there's a graduate group is starting next Monday, and obviously graduate school has its own unique challenges. So it can be really helpful to talk to other graduate students in particular, not to say that other groups can't be helpful as well. Is it too late for people to join the graduate student group?
It is not. So I have a list of referrals that I've gotten from some of my clients and some of the other clinicians' clients, but it is not late. We have not started the group. It is, I haven't even sent out the Zoom for it yet. I've literally compiled the list and gotten times and all of that. So it's going to be Mondays at 2:30. It lasts about 90 minutes. And if you are interested, again, call the counseling center. They'll probably set you up with a consultation with me to talk about that, but it's definitely not too late. And we'll continue, at some point it will be too late. So we'll continue to take new people into the group until it either is full, which was usually about, 10 people is probably max for our group. So they're very small groups, or it gets to a point where we've kind of made cohesion and we've closed the group. So usually that's within about 3 weeks of meeting. And I think with the semester being so short now, that makes it even a little more difficult. But you can if you don't get in this semester, or if the time doesn't work for you, you can always say, hey, keep me in mind for January. I'll put you on a list. And when we start back in January, we kind of reopen it again, and you're more than welcome to join then if the time works for you. But yeah, grad group's great. I'm so excited to have it back after not having it since March. And it's great because, like I said, you have students in a bio class program saying, oh, that happens in accounting as well. Like I just thought that was our department. It is great to see, that you are not alone, not even just within your own department, but within being a grad student of your experiences. So absolutely, we welcome you to join that group if you have a desire to do so. Any other questions about Counseling Center or anything?
I just want to acknowledge that I added in to the chat the mental wellness drop-in. So that is where we have one of our doctoral students in counseling who runs that. So she'll be sitting there ready for questions about Counseling Center, about counseling in general, right? Maybe it's asking about what groups we're running or what counselors are running the groups or what days they're on, things like that. You can definitely drop in, so you don't have to call or you don't have to make an appointment at a certain time, but you can ask those general questions. It's certainly not a therapy session, so don't expect that, but it'll be a time to learn more about what we do.
All right. Thank you again for your time. Thank you. And thanks for hanging in there for one more Zoom. Hopefully you're done for the day. Not, you got this though. And thanks for inviting us again, Dr. Cluck and Paige. Again, it's always a pleasure. We enjoy doing this.
Thank you so much. There are people saying thank you in the chat as well. Just want to make sure you see that, but thank you very much. We so appreciate it.
All right. Have a good evening.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey, thank you.